It is February 15th, 2024. The Elden Ring DLC has been in development for around 2 years at the time of recording, a longer time between initial release and DLC than any other FromSoft title to date. Fans have taken ravenously to any news of the DLC since its announcement a year ago, with little more than an image and a title. There is wild speculation and a lot of possible evidence the release could be upon us any day now, possibly on the game's 2-year anniversary. There is also evidence to the contrary, though both are fueled by just how little the community knows. But rather than tell you when I think the DLC is coming out, I want to briefly explore why the wait is so hard. Why are fans so on edge for a DLC? The answer, in my mind, is simple. Elden Ring has no equal. There is no other game that anyone who adores this series can play and get the same type of satisfaction. There are imitators, some even improving on certain design elements, but nothing that truly touches what makes these games special. For me, it is a unique combination of single-player and multiplayer gameplay, placed onto a system with strong character building options and a respect for the player's time in making those decisions and having that play experience. There is no alternative to this game type. In no other series can you create a character, instead of playing as a preset, then build that character with hundreds of weapons, skills, and levels to make them all your own. Then take that unique creation with which you have tried and triumphed and shove them down the throat of your peers. Cooperation is nothing new to games, though its nuances are largely genre-specific. Invasions, however, are a wholly special mechanic. The ability to attack others during their independent or cooperative process and force your design into their world is so special, and that any game lacks any part of these mechanics will simply not do. Being invaded for the first time is confusing. The next, terrifying. Every time after that, some combination of frustration and excitement. You may revel in turning the tables on an invader, showing them just how well you've prepared. You may be urged to escape their wrath, certain you stand no chance against any who would willingly seek out conflict against another. But in all scenarios, it is provocative. I am certain there are many who play the game who despise invasions, many who want them stripped from the game without ceremony or send-off. They are wrong. Not in the way that they are upset by being invaded, but that they are wrong to believe it should not be part of the game. Invasions are what make the game so unique. They are a necessity to keep the series' identity as a standalone titan of its own genre. Let's look at the two major preceding releases by From Software, Sekiro and Dark Souls 3. Sekiro is, for better or worse, considered by many to be a part of the Souls series. I personally am not in this camp. For me, Sekiro is an entirely different series and genre with close ties due to the developer and direction. In Sekiro, you cannot make a character. You cannot make a build. You have some diversity over your exact style, but the vast majority of gameplay choices decided for you, and the challenge comes from your mastery of deploying those choices in the correct sequence. There is no room for role-playing. There is no multiplayer. In no way is Sekiro delivering on the vast majority of what Souls fans have come to expect. Now, in the case of Dark Souls 3, this was a game that took these mechanics to a new level. With the release of the third in the series, it took the janky multiplayer of 1 and 2 and made it more accessible. Few, if any, gimmicks to entry. Yes, you still required a soapstone. Yes, you must use an ember. But now you had a password, an implementation first achieved in Bloodborne, allowing you to find the person you wanted to match with. No longer would you be forced to find some desolate corner to place your sign, and better still, the multiplayer worked. It wasn't always the smoothest experience, latency and netcode come to mind, but it was leagues better than what came before. You could reliably play through the entire game with friends, resummoning often, a chore of embracing immersion, but together all said and done. Now, between those two, which do people miss? You can play Sekiro all day, every day, but you probably won't. It's not the type of experience that lends itself to variation or replayability. Dark Souls 3, on the other hand, can be played indefinitely. It is played indefinitely by people to this day, nearly 8 years after its release. Not only because of its variations in character building, but because of what a competent multiplayer experience does to a single-player experience. It expands it. Every game I have ever played in my entire life has disappointed me on this front. It is either an entirely single-player game, where at the end of the day, I cannot reach out with my creation and interact with others, or it goes too far in the alternative, where multiplayer is either the only choice or a completely separate experience from the single player. MMOs and first-person shooters come to mind, but not the Souls series. These games bring with them such a specific playstyle that nothing else can suffice. I see it constantly. Other games pitched as Dark Souls but survival, or Bloodborne but with puppets, and while I am glad others take note of how great this series is, I am confident they do not see why, or at least we disagree on that point. The magic of what this series does is in the execution of every aspect of the game at the same time, and that is what makes it so hard to wait. Elden Ring has been a success, but for me, I have been left wanting. It has severely diminished its multiplayer experience from Dark Souls 3. The removal of covenants and their invasion zones, and the removal of the option to expand the player count from 4 to 6 has been a death blow to so many creators and fans. Sure, you can still invade, but it is lesser than it was, than it could be. With no option for overworld 4v2 and 3v3, instead offering a shallow experience in the arena that quickly wears out its welcome, the game has been abandoned by those who care the most. And it is on these fronts that the DLC brings hope. With the DLC will come new content for every type of player. New content that might just expand all the parts the base game forgot. We may get an expanded player count. They could add Covenant invasions. They could give people a reason to play forever. I made this video to cherish that moment. The moment before I know what they've done. The skeptic in me says they will not change what needs to be changed, that what they created was not an accident, but an experiment in a long line of experiments, that what they built with Dark Souls was a different game, and what made it truly special is no longer the focus of their game design. I hope I am wrong. To finalize my point, I want to say simply that the wait is hardest for those who care the most, and Elden Ring leaves so much to be desired. It is impressive in ways I would have never thought to ask, and a questionable departure on subtle things that meant the world to me and others like me. As the game stands, it is a half measure. The fans who cared nothing for the whole of the experience simply want more of that same, limited experience. Vast, but finite in its execution. Those who thrive on the full experience are starving.